Opie and Jimmy continue. On with the show.
The character's supposed to be a Jew, but they don't want to.
We're on, Gilbert. I like you, so I'll shut you up right now.
Yeah, Dick
got a
Cavett has entered.
Yeah, Dick Cavett has entered the studio and has already entertained us for the last 10 minutes with impressions. Yeah, I would love it. We should have waited for the radio. There was some good stuff in there.
I would like to say, for the record, I wasn't entertained by anything Dick Cavett said.
That is true. Gilbert interrupted and heckled the entire time. That's very rude.
He waves at the audience when you're on stage with him and drops his pants and other people.
We were just talking about Hillary just before the mics went on, and that was a real surprise in Michigan.
Yeah, we're sitting here in the shock waves of Bernie's trouncing her in Michigan. Nobody even predicted it would be close.
I thought she had like a 12-point lead or something like that going into it.
Can they get a refund on the polls that people charged them for?
It was close, though.
So far off.
It was just 49.9 to 48.2. So
yeah, but it wasn't supposed to be close.
No, they split the delegates more or less, 65 to 58. Yeah.
But more importantly, how do you rearrange Hillary Clinton's name to spell out a sentence?
Oh,
that's what you are.
Well, see, I can't do my anagrams if I'm asked. They
you do anagrams?
Yeah, it's a curse. And I remember sitting there on the show and talking to somebody. Well, Spiro Agnew, singular worst guest I ever had on.
Really? Why?
Dismal, dull, boring, and unfunny. Everybody said he'd be swell.
Oh, wow.
And all I could think of and should have said is, do you realize if you rearrange the letters of your name, it spells grow a penis?
Do you see those
I love
instantly?
That Gottfried laugh. It's so funny.
It's the best.
Do you see those in your head instantly, or do
sort of? The one that scared me. I had been playing a word game one summer with some people out there I was sharing a house with, and you rearranged letters to make as many words as you could on the table, move them around. And I've got so I could do it without wanting to. I remember driving in, and Mr. Donut sign was there, and Donut was burned out. So it just said Mr., and I thought Mr., miters, timers, remits, merits, all of those. No, it's a quirk that's a little insane.
Oh, cool. I hope it doesn't happen when you hear the word ginger.
Oh, well done. Well done. Yeah. You mean the word. The G word.
Or maggot.
Yeah.
Go maggot.
Here's the one, though. 2 a.m., driving past the old East Hampton movie theater, on an old marquee of the kind you put the letters up. And I guess some kid put them up and didn't know one actor from another and looked and see who's in the movie, and he'd put up Lawrence of Arabia starring Alec Guinness. And I had just done a show with O'Toole, so I was going to take a picture so he'd know who the star of Lawrence of Arabia is. And the little voice said, genuine laces? No, genuine class. That's Alec Guinness.
Right.
Huh.
So your mind just rearranges those.
Yeah.
No, it's
That's a brilliance.
Yeah.
I take a reality and I reject it and change it.
Absolutely. I did that once. Lewis Friend, iron sulfide, Silence of the Lambs.
That's a beauty.
Yeah, that was in Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter would do these anagrams. It was great.
He was into
Atheist
that a little
is
bit.
eat shit.
Is it really? Oh, wow.
Nice.
Jesus.
That's a direct message to God.
Wow. That's
You said it.
So what do you think of this election, Mr. Cavett? It's pretty.
I'd rather talk about almost anything in the
I
world.
understand.
Did you hear about Trump, though?
Spiro Agnew.
Well, how about this? We said earlier we haven't seen anything like this in our lifetime. I mean, have you ever seen anything this crazy?
No,
in
there's
politics?
nothing comparable to this.
There's nothing, right?
That a man without a single skill needed to be the president of the United States, who is repulsive, misogynistic, and so cleverly, people could learn from him, showed how not to offend the Klan or the white supremacists by using a word they probably didn't even know, disavow.
Right.
Is that all you have to say about them? And he was winking, I'm sure, at the time.
You don't like Trump?
Yeah, Trump, yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
But if Dick Cavett doesn't like him? I'm not gonna like
What
him.
do you see in him?
I like the fact that he's just wrecking this experience for the rest of them.
I should have known, knowing you. Yeah.
I like that he's calling everyone out. The media, the politicians, how they've campaigned over the years. You know, because I think we're all sick of these politicians speaking in sound bites and not really speaking their minds.
I think
Instead
he's
of in
got-
lies.
He's gotten so popular
Yeah,
because it's a matter of like saying stuff. Everyone's so scared to say anything nowadays. So someone speaks their mind. It's like, oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
political correctness has gotten out of
But
control
any
in this
idiot
country.
can speak his mind, as he proves.
And I proved several times.
Yeah,
I
you certainly
prove
have, haven't you?
constantly.
If you ever speak your mind, it's all over. How can we stop him?
What happened? We need a new insurance duck. Yeah, Gilbert talks.
That was
He's
a
doing a
biggie
lot
for
of
Gilbert.
things that Nixon did, only Nixon was at least intelligent, well-informed, and clever about it. So Nixon had his Southern strategy, which he was able to bring off without openly offending.
You know, before you
minorities.
came in here, before you came in here, it was an entertaining show. But before you came in
And
here,
then they got you.
everyone was having fun. Everyone was
You don't want to know
relaxed.
what we were talking
Oh,
about.
I
right
know.
There
The people
was-
at home must wonder, but it's somewhat true. They were telling farmers' daughters jokes. Just about anything.
We were having a square dance in here before
Yeah,
you
we were
came
talking
in.
about Hitler shitting
Yeah.
on people.
Right? Yeah.
And then Dick walked in and says, leukemia, gentlemen.
Yeah.
As Trevor Howard said in some movie very movingly upon hearing upon someone's death, he said, "Oh my God, I am sorry."
We got to up our game, is what we're saying.
Well, you talk about Nixon. Nixon was was gunning for you at one point because of an anti-war.
More like 6 or 8 points.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can still get fun by tuning to the thing. I think it's probably still on YouTube, where you see the great unindicted co-conspirator himself sitting in the Oval Office with his, to use an Elizabethan term, lickspittle, H.R. Haldeman, and the words come
Now,
on.
Jim, you've indulged in licks.
I certainly have.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up.
Yeah, it's a fetish I paid for. Strap on and lickspittle. It's also a great store.
The thing,
I remember the cop show, Strap On and Lick
Strap on and lickspittle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was with John Chuck.
not suitable for adults.
So what
Oh,
happened?
but the first words that, since it's a still photo, but it gives the impression that they're talking because the words go on, and the sound from the Nixon tapes, and it begins. What is Cavett anyway? And Haldeman says, "Oh, he's the worst. He loads every show with something." And Nixon interrupts. It goes on, but the beautiful last line is, he comes back to the subject and says, "Cavett, there must be something we can do to screw him."
Wow.
Wow. Oh, that's an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and didn't he respond? We've been trying to.
You know too much. In fact, yes, I almost forget this. I obviously didn't know about it at the time because it's when the tapes were discovered, and years later they're playing them now. But he did manage to screw. By the way, screw was the nicest word in his vocabulary. He was the filthiest mouthed son of a mother.
Right.
And it's part of his obsession with his manhood. You know, he was always saying, so-and-so's a real man, and then making that little purse thing he did with his mouth. But anyway, we can't blame him for that. But yeah, here's what happened. Ran into a woman on my staff who'd been on it years earlier, and she said, I ran into Arlene, who was also on the staff, and she said she'd been audited. And then I said, well, I was audited too. What year was it? And it was the same year. So the the unprincipled president couldn't get at me really as much as he wanted. And because I had obeyed John Lennon's request to come down and testify that he shouldn't be thrown out of the country by the Yorba Linda wonder, and it was just a case of nastiness, extreme nastiness on his part. He audited everybody on my staff, which of course hurt as some would say, the little people.
Right.
So,
A phrase of Joan Crawford.
I had David Steinberg on the podcast.
Herr Steinberg.
Herr Steinberg. And he said, he used to do Nixon jokes.
Yeah.
And then he would find when he was on tour, people in the audience would start heckling him, really, when he'd start doing the Nixon jokes. And then he started to recognize the hecklers and that they were following him. And like it
Wow.
was sent over. And then some guy came along and he said, look, I know you've been having trouble. I'm with the FBI. I'll protect you. I'll travel with you. And then this guy, who was his protection, when all this Watergate stuff happened, he's watching the news and the guy's sitting next to Nixon.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was creepy.
Now, is that his great story, or is that the signs of mental illness
of
in
course.
David Steinberg? And I looked over, and Himmler was booing me.
He was eloquent, though,
And-
like when he was in China and they took him to the Great Wall. And you remember what he said?
What?
This is indeed a great wall.
Who said that, Nixon?
Nixon.
We were talking about the time you always, that's what I remember, when you'd have Groucho on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
The best aging Groucho ever done.
I just watched that again on YouTube, the 1969 thing.
Is that the good one where the one where he has
Yeah.
the golf hat on?
yeah,
Yes.
with the little golf balls on
Little
it.
balls on
Yeah.
it. And
There's
here's
a story
quick
behind-
story
yeah,
about
go ahead,
that.
Sorry.
When I was working
No, he
with
was.
Harpo, and Harpo would play the harp. Now, the harp back then was a musical instrument that you'd hit the strings and it would make a sound and it would make music.
This is cruel.
Now, music back then was something that had a melody, and if you
The people at home can't imagine this, but behind Gilbert's head, there's Groucho singing Lydia on my window.
The tattooed
about
lady.
that hat, wouldn't you love to know what became of it?
Yes.
Yes.
I wonder
Yes.
who's got it.
Someone's got that
There
hat.
it is again.
What
And,
story?
Well,
Go ahead.
I had Groucho on 10 times, I think, maybe 12. And
Jesus, that's more. That's
he was on with that hat with Truman Capote.
Wow.
And when you had Truman on, you had to brace yourself because the minute he spoke, the audience laughed every time. He was, as Norman Mailer said, a ballsy little guy, and it didn't bother him. But Groucho on that show proposed marriage to Truman. And Capote was no fool. And Groucho one day said, "So what about my offer?" And Capote said, "Well, I could never marry a man who has 3 balls on his hat." Oh my God, I can't get back to my own voice now.
You were with Brando when he punched that paparazzi.
Yeah, he knocked Ron Galella. He broke his jaw. 8 inches from my face, maybe 6.
Wow. What were you guys doing?
One of the thrillingest moments
Yeah.
of my life.
Now but didn't this Galella then follow him with like a football helmet?
Yeah, he held
on?
with an
Yes.
eagle feather
Yeah.
on it, and it's a wonder he didn't get whacked again. But
So
I didn't hear how that case came out for a long time, and then the next time I saw Marlon, I said, "What about the Galella thing?" And he said, "Best $56,000 I ever spent." Might have been 26. I don't know. A lot of money in those days.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
guys were just walking to eat or something, right? And he just came up and he got
Well,
sucked.
no. After the show I did with Brando, he said, "You want to go to a Chinese restaurant?" And I said, "Sure." He was trying to find an old Chinese restaurant that he'd known in his old days, and we went down to Chinatown, and it was that picture. Imagine.
there's Galella.
Wow.
with the and it was Chinatown was closed. In effect, it looked like the closed Chinatown standing set at Universal or something. Couldn't find it. Galella pulled up, hopped out of the car with his assistant, and I said, "Oh God, it's Galella. What's one of those Galella?" I said, "The bigger one." I'll cut to the moment. "Hey, Marlon, take off those sunglasses." Don't you get tired of taking the same picture all the time? What'd you say? Leaning in. Don't you get tired of taking
Wow.
a sucker punch in the middle of a sentence? He does that in 2 movies.
Wow. That's
Jesus, it came up from the sidewalk. And
Really?
I swear to God, it lifted Galella. Between the first and second knuckle, the teeth entered the Galella hand. And did you know that morsus humanus is the dirtiest wound you can get?
What's
Human
that?
bite.
Oh, really? Oh, he bit Brando's hand from
I
hitting
know you
him.
like Latin, and that's why.
Yes, I do. Very much.
It was like Cavett is pantomiming a
biting the knuckles.
scar that resembled a vaginal.
I wouldn't know. Yeah.
We're gonna go. Oh, there we are, just before the moment.
Oh, that's
Wow.
that
Does that
day.
look arrestable on sight?
Oh boy.
You both have on like neckerchiefs.
Yeah, why?
I don't know. Is it style back then? 73?
You kind of look like Woody Allen's stuntman.
And he looks like a predator of some sort.
He looks scary.
We hopped
You don't want to
into
mess
a
with
cab.
that
there.
version of Marlon Brando.
We got in a cab,
Yeah.
and the driver was Chinese, and he ordered us out of the cab. And he said, "You make trouble. I see you fight. I'm not going." He was from Harvard, and Marlon said, he turned on that surge of power that only he could do on the screen, and said, "We're going to the Russian tea room." Yes, sir. And we did. Funnily enough, we passed, with his wound seeping, Last Tango on a marquee. So that dates it for me when it was. Last Tango was just out. I was working at Time as a copy boy, and a woman came in who worked there and said, "Jesus, I just saw a screening of this new movie, Last Tango." And right at the beginning, Marlon just throws this woman up against a wall and fucks her right on the screen. And I thought, is there a cartoon? What a guy.
What about that picture of him that we talked about recently, that famous picture of him blowing Wally Cox or something? They
Yes.
say he did it at a party?
Yeah, I saw that
You
picture.
saw this?
But
I never
people-
heard of that.
People said that they started sending another form of that picture, and it has something to do with a carrot and a horse, and then they turned it into.
There is such a picture?
Oh,
yeah, well, let's-
was that
So-
a photo?
so in other
Yeah,
words-
there you go. This picture made the rounds.
Whoa.
It's okay. Brando was blowing a horse. He was not blowing
Oh,
Wally
it
Cox.
just appeared behind you,
Yeah.
and I think
See,
you're
One
right.
is much younger. No. One is a mimic. This is even much younger. And this one,
Yeah, and then
right there, he's younger. You could tell.
Who can
right.
tell it's Brando?
It looks like him, I guess. But
It
I think
does.
he's.
Yeah, I
they
think
said he
the eyes
edited
are
it.
right.
And how did Wally Cox get a black cock?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know,
well,
that's
that's
what
just
I
the
Not
lighting.
easy. Practice.
That's why Brando liked him.
Practice.
That picture's that's been making the rounds for many years.
But they were fucking each other, weren't they? Marlon Brando and Wally Cox.
Not while I was there. They had an apartment. There were 3 people, 3 individuals, as a cop would say. The one individual, of course, was Marlon, and the other one was Cox, and the third one was a raccoon. He had a pet raccoon.
Did he really?
Or Brando did, yeah.
They shared an
I mean,
apartment.
Marlon did.
Yes.
He said I could call him that.
What was it like going out with him?
My God, Marlon's an anagram for normal, isn't it?
Hey.
Oh,
Wow.
God.
Nice.
Oh, this is
If you
scary.
add the second name, it's normal and broad.
Aha.
And Broad.
It's too late to tell him.
I know. He knew, though. He knew.
he probably figured that out one night.
I'm sure you could get that, what's his name, John Edwards or something, who speaks to the dead.
Wouldn't you love to get
He helps people. So what was Brando like to go out with? Like, you going out with probably the biggest star in the world.
Yeah, I would remind myself of that, but it didn't seem that way. He was personable, and he liked to talk, and he gave me unreadable books that he would read about philosophy and.
Okay, now here's the thing I suspect about Brando. And it's a quote, a famous quote from Truman Capote that always stayed with me because I believe it.
A New Yorker piece.
Okay.
Capote.
Yeah. Truman Capote said that all actors are dumb. And I believe that.
I know what he meant, but I gave him a very bad time because he said it on a show of mine. And it sort of tainted our relationship. Actors can't afford to be intelligent because they have to have no personality or mind. They have to absorb other people's minds and personalities. And I said, that is so much crap, Truman. I know actors who would make you look like a member of the Jukes family. Most people don't know that reference. They were feeble-minded, as they used to say.
They don't sound bright.
No, we
The
assume they.
Jukes and the Calicacs were two.
See, at first I thought
IQ
you said
8 point.
that make you look like a member of a Jew family.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
thought,
the Jukes.
why does he?
You have to be my age to remember.
Why does he
the
got to
Ju-
bring up?
Well, Google the Jukes and the Calicacs.
Now, do you
They're
believe
spelled
that?
the usual way?
Now, Mr. Cavett, do you believe? I
You don't
feel
stop
like
calling me
Senator
that.
Joe
I'm going to
McCarthy.
slap you.
Huh,
You can call me Mr. Dick.
Yes, Mr. Dick. Mr.
You make
Dick.
it sound awful.
Do you believe that it's coming out now that Hitler liked to get shit on?
No, it was a well-known comedian.
Well, Danny Thomas, we know it.
We've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
before,
we already know
But-
about Danny Thomas. And
But
the
we've
coffee
heard
table.
now news is coming out. Hitler liked to get shit on, but without the glass coffee table.
Oh, no. How did this come out now? Come out's an interesting word. Phrase. What?
They
You
said
know-
they found old medical records about his mangled penis. There's been these weird rumors
Oh,
about him in
yeah,
toilet games for years.
Yeah, of course. I get a laugh now at a personal appearance, but for some reason, because one night somebody said, "Do you like everybody in show business?" Dumb question from the audience. And I said, "No, they're some of the worst people in the world. They're well-known stars in the business." And terribly disliked. Jack Benny was probably the most loved man in the business ever. His generosity, his kindness, all the things he did. And then at the other end of the scale, there was, a comedian. I won't say his name, but his initials are Danny Kaye.
Oh, wow. He was a real dick, huh?
I heard
Universally
he was
loathed.
hated.
Yeah.
Everyone I've spoken to who've met him has hated him.
What was wrong with him?
Yeah, what was his problem?
Yeah.
Prickness.
Oh, just a prick.
Just prickness in general.
Rude, ungrateful.
In Tony
nasty
Curtis's
people.
book, Tony Curtis says he ran into Danny Kaye at a party, and Danny Kaye was very insulting, kept insulting him, and finally Tony Curtis said, "Fuck you, Danny."
I love wit in every form. I'll try to make this quick, but Danny Kaye came on my morning show. In those days, I still liked him. To me, he's a comedian you grow out of. As a kid, you think he's great. And later, anyway, he came on. He adored me, which is always kind of embarrassing. Many of the worst people adore me.
I'm a big
And he
fan.
came on. Well, I couldn't think of a compliment to give him because I had soured on him years earlier. But there he was, and the audience was in awe of him. And I said, you are, I thought, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? You are the most graceful of all comedians. His
Oh,
movements
yes.
And things you could do physically and verbally. And that night he broke his ankle. And everybody was happy, and he came back on. He was out of the. He was on the show, that Hammerstein musical, Flowering Peach, whatever it was, on Broadway, in which he distinguished himself in Boston by unzipping a lady's dress during a serious song she was singing, and he spoke to me, boys and girls, 3 times from the stage the night I was there. I got farther and farther down.
Oh, you're uncomfortable.
And
Now-
tell me if you've heard this, even
Okay.
you, Gottfried. Gottfried, is it? By the way, that's a devastating thing to use. Tom, is it? Tom, 2 beats, is it? Try it out, it's magic. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh,
Danny
the
Kaye.
last night of that musical, when It's a Wonder He hadn't been murdered by the entire cast, which sold out every night he was in it. He took 2 weeks off, and they had 20 people per night, and then he came back and showed his great power. Anyway, the last night, closing night, in a moment of generosity, he gave everybody, I'm making a gesture, about 6 by 6 foot piece of wood, inlaid, probably from Dunhill's, a cheese board with a nice little silver knife for cutting the cheese with it, pardon the expression, for severing the cheese from, and everybody got one, probably 90 of them, all the gypsies, everybody. They all hurried home or out of the theater to see him come out. Can you see it coming? Through the alley. And all the cheese boards were in the garbage cans and on the floor.
Wow.
Every single one.
So he saw it?
Well, he couldn't miss it.
Okay.
He had
Now,
to-
now,
he had to
most
step over.
importantly, were Danny Kaye and Laurence Olivier sucking each other's cocks?
That's a great question.
That's yeah.
I think only one was. You really know how to set a guy. That's another unkillable rumor in the business, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah, I've seen that photo of Olivier and him, though, in that mirror with Kay. Danny Kaye was in good shape for
Oh,
a
yeah.
comedian. Comedians usually not fucking ripped like that in the
He's
40s.
ripped.
Well, he did a dirty trick on Olivier.
Yeah.
He set it all up so that when he came through customs once, and
Oh, he put on a
they made him
disguise.
strip in a strip search in a room, and then the guys revealed themselves as people hired by Danny Kaye.
Was he
That's
was he
kinda
a funny
funny.
comic, though? As in, like, I don't remember anything he did.
Danny Kaye?
Yeah, I
Well,
can't.
see, you didn't grow up in the right time to see him in Hans Christian Andersen, Mary Andrew, the one where he does a fabulous duel with the great Basil Rathbone, who was the best swordsman in Hollywood, by the way. You should make a point of seeing the funny ones.
Oh, Hans Christian Andersen,
There's
and
that
oh,
one.
and the Secret Life
What's
of Walter Mitty.
What's the one with all the beautiful, complicated, articulate songs that he does so well? Well, he probably does one in every movie. His wife wrote all his great material for him, and he was apparently a shit to her.
I don't like musical comedies, though. That type of stuff never really. I prefer slapstick.
Yeah, well, this isn't like Marietta or so. It's what's the one that he's the fun? The Jester is in the title.
Court Jester.
Yeah, Court Jester.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that with the pestle, with the
The
something?
vessel with the pestle, the flagon with the dragon, with the something has the brew that is true, and the great Mildred Natwick is in that.
Wait, that's from there. Is there any video of that? I just.
He's George
Oh, the
Carlin's
vessel
hero.
with the
Is
pestle
he?
has
Yeah.
the pellet with the poison, Gilbert.
Carlin, he was a handsome
The
guy, though. You know,
Flagon
again, for-
with the dragon has the brew that is true, and he gets it mixed up, but it's quite brilliant.
Carlin liked him, huh?
Loved him.
I didn't know that.
It was Carlin's guy, huh?
Yeah.
The audience at home must be
No,
enjoying
no. Carlin worshipped him
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And then he said one time he was waiting outside the theater where Danny Kaye was going to come out, and there were other group of kids, and Danny Kaye was like, basically get the fuck away from me.
Yeah, there are 100 stories like that about him, and yet he was publicly UNICEF or one of the children's things.
Well, that's what he used to be when he was with Laurence Olivier. They were
Is that another
UNICEF.
word for
Yeah, that's the
Carlin.
word.
George, wasn't it?
George Carlin.
I like that. I think good trick.
That's a great trick.
Why was Jerry Lewis canned from the telethon?
I don't know, because it's so funny. Nobody says the muscular dystrophy telethon. You always say the Jerry Lewis telethon.
Jerry Lewis, or Jerry Lewis show.
The
Yeah.
Jerry Lewis show.
Yeah.
And ever since he was canned, nobody cares about muscular dystrophy anymore.
They fired him, or he
Well,
left?
I remember when he had raised millions and millions, and somebody wrote an article saying, this is money utterly wasted. We're not getting away with this disease. No recent research has produced anything. And one of the stories was that Jerry just spent $1 million a year on Cadillac limousines and things for himself. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't he step down? They're saying he stepped down.
No, I
No, he
think
was
they fired
bounced.
him.
Yeah,
And
they
I met
probably-
the man who did it at an odd cocktail party.
Yeah,
Said
they
my
probably.
distinguished moment in life is I forgot to fire Jerry Lewis.
Oh, wonderful.
Now, Jerry was, as people say in show business, always nice to me.
Oh yes, yes.
Jerry's a dear friend of mine.
I
I worked for him
yeah. Oh,
What'd you write
you
for him?
wrote for him.
on
That's
that
right.
that 2-hour spectacular
Oh my
disaster.
God, that was a
It's
disaster.
like having been on the Hindenburg.
They,
What
they
was
gave
it?
him 2 hours to do whatever he wanted with.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
and
was
he
like,
did.
and I was a kid, and I loved Jerry Lewis, so I
Sure.
wanted to, and even as a kid, I thought, oh, this is a piece of shit. This is,
I could do an hour on that show. I imagined a little voice in Brooklyn, was it, saying this is a piece of shit? It must have been you.
oh, yeah. But it's like ever since they fired Jerry Lewis, then the next telethon was like an hour long or
Hosted
something.
by the late Jack Bailey or something.
Yeah, and
That's a name you don't know, isn't it? Jack Bailey.
Jack Bailey.
He was
I-
a kind of a seedy, I hope his daughter isn't listening, a kind of a seedy host of very low-level game shows for years and years.
Jack Bailey.
And the great Jack Parr,
Yeah.
the year I started working for him, and Jack took the show to Hollywood for the second time. Before that, he couldn't get anybody. Jack was new. He couldn't get any guests. This trip, a typical 4-guest show would be Red Skelton and Peter Lorre and Olivia de Havilland and Cary Grant or something. Jack got everybody. And in the first monologue, he said, I'm so thrilled the people we have on the next 2 weeks. The last time we were here, I had to pull strings to get Jack Bailey. And pull strings to get Jack Bailey was perfect wording. Jack was a brilliant ad-libber. He hasn't had enough credit for that. We all know our friend Fat Jack Leonard, right?
I know the name. I know
Yes.
De Niro's a big fat Jackie Leonard
You
fan.
are
Yeah.
a tot, aren't you?
I'm
yeah,
not-
here's a
Yeah, that's the voice.
Yeah.
I lost more weight than you are. Why don't you put your glasses on backwards and walk into yourself? Boom, boom. Well, he was very funny, a lovely man. He always brought cufflinks and things, gifts to the staff when he was on Tonight Show, and I liked him a lot. And but Jack came up one night to me and said, "You know, Fat Jack's on tonight. You know how when he says something, you have to say something back, and then he plays off that, and then you have something. You have to. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit there." So Fat Jack comes on, he starts doing his stuff. Let's put your glasses on backwards and walk into yourself. I want a woman who was sober. Jack says nothing. Why don't I tell you, my cousin is sober. I don't even nothing. And poor Jack Leonard started to sweat. It was almost sad. Jack would just sit there or at the most say, "Indeed, Mr. Leonard." And finally, Jack Leonard, desperate, reached for something to say, a fact from his life. He said, "You know, my wife's an acrobat," and Jack said she'd have to be. Brought down the house. I told him about it later. He didn't remember it.
What was the big fight that Jack Parr had with Walter Winchell? Didn't they go back and forth?
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten that. Yeah, Jack was the only one with the courage to attack the great Walter Winchell. Of course, Walter Winchell had lost a couple of his fangs by that time, and was sort of a pathetic character. But what's the movie with Tony Curtis and that's supposed to be based on Winchell?
Oh, the sweet smell of
Smell.
success.
Yeah, Winchell was powerful, cruel, bigoted turd, and but nice. And one day I get a phone call. Mr. Winchell would like to talk to you. This is way after the height of his career, but he was the voice on The Untouchables. Brilliant. That was
Yes.
because his show always began with, "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North American, all the ships at sea, let's go to press. Washington." He had that kind of delivery. He had been a vaudevillian. "Walter Winchell wants to take you to the Copa tonight." And I had to get into a tux because he was wearing one. And this old fossil who had been a giant in his day showed up at my apartment, picks me up, tux, cummerbund, a 38 in the cummerbund, because he thought they were out to get him, and in fact, they'd forgotten him.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
And he liked to get in a car. During his whole career, he had a police radio. He had permission to have police radio. So he'd chase down calls and get stories that way. He had the police radio and going. We went down to some precinct, and there was nothing there. They'd got a guy for loitering or something. And Winchell just didn't want to leave the police station because that used to be where, hey, Walter, great. None of the young cops knew who he was. And some kid said, hey, mister, talk again. Oh, yeah, you're the guy from the Untouchables. And Winchell just glowed and dropped about 20 years, identified for his voice on a television show. But what did he do with the rest of his life? I don't know.
Sounds like it was
He
sad.
was a bastard.
He was a
There he
nasty
is.
guy.
Really?
There he is now.
I'm especially important.
At Columbia Hospital, Washington, Mr. Brown is New York City's next commissioner of investigation. New York City, it's a baby boy for the John Costellos at Leroy Sanitarium. The lovely mother is the song star, Nancy Donovan. New York City, hear this. Dorothy Parker, the famous playwright and poet, will make a speech in New York on the 17th at a hall in Greenwich Village, probably on 4th Street, on behalf of the communists now in American jails for conspiring to overthrow the United States. Good girl, good girl.
What a cool delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really
Classic.
dramatic.
But
Very
I
classic.
heard he was really pro, like McCarthy.
Oh, he was a rabid anti-communist, McCarthyist. And one night he said live on the nationwide radio where everybody listened to him, and a president who doesn't know what the H-E-double-L is going on. That was Truman. And that almost ended his career.
For saying hell on the radio or for
not even
bashing the
saying it,
president?
just
and spelling it.
Just
yeah.
spelling
Yeah,
it.
H-E-double-L. He was.
That would
Wow,
cause
imagine if he
problems.
spelled cunt, but with a K.
As Mel Brooks said about Hitler, he was a hell of a tap dancer. But he was from vaudeville, and he was a tap dancer, and he danced on my show and Jack's show a couple of times.
Walter Winchell?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I heard during the show, Danny Kaye used to blow him. Is that Danny Kaye used to blow Walter Winchell? Or was that Marlon Brando?
On the air?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Marlon Brando and Wally Cox would be under his desk.
Yeah.
Gottfried, you are going to leave your brain to a Harvard lab, aren't you?
It does explain some of the stuff. We've got to stop the communist menace. A little less teeth. Now on to...
That's quite good. That's the sort of thing we expect from him.
So what do you think? These guys, you would get them to dance and do all this cool stuff on your show. It just seems like the celebrity interviews now are so much different. They're not like free-flowing. They're not comfortable.
I don't know what that is. People always say nobody's doing what you did, and I don't know what that is. For one thing, I had 90 minutes, which in some ways is easier than doing 7 with somebody.
Can I explain what it is, Mr. Cavett? Because me and Gottfried were talking about it before you came in here. Nowadays, late night talk shows, every minute, every second is important. They got to fill up the space. You would let the room breathe.
You
and
feel
just
an urgency all the time.
It's
and
an
Are they
urgency.
going to run into the commercial?
And it's also obvious that there's no surprises. There's the pre-interview where it's like, all right, we're going to talk about this, this, and this. And I would bet you that you barely had a pre-interview back in your day, and you would let.
Jack Parr established how that kind of talk show worked. Maybe Steve Allen did. Essentially, there was a staff with a number of people who would call Peter Ustinov or whoever the great guests were, or the bad guests.
Yeah.
And say if there's anything you want to talk about, or they would just say, I don't need anything. I know Jack or Dick or whatever. And I found one of the best things you could do is abandon your notes right away.
Of course.
Because the best advice, and I'll tell it only one more time, came from Jack Parr. Most neurotic, exciting, strange, troublesome, hateful at times, brilliant TV presence ever. Danger, sense of danger and everything he did. Anyway, he called me up. He was off by then. I was starting. He said, hey, kid, listen, I got one piece of advice. Whatever you do on a talk show, don't do interviews. And I thought, what do I do, sing the whole show?
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, interviews. That's Q&A, and what's your favorite color, and David Frost and his damn clipboard and his jet lag, and what do you think of me, and what do you... Make it a conversation.
It's funny on talk shows when the host will go, "Hey, I don't remember. I read somewhere or overheard you were stuck in an elevator in a gorilla suit," and it's like, yeah, that wasn't prepared ahead of time.
Right.
That just came up in conversation.
That phrase I read somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody said the other day. Yeah, but some people are hard to converse with. But when a conversation goes and you're thinking, I just can't wait to talk about this and talk about that, and instead of that dreary Midwestern little junior high school girl's question, who's been your most interesting guest? My most interesting guest? How can you answer? Who's your favorite guest? Well, how can you say?
Right.
There's a winner among thousands of interesting people. And if pushed to the wall, I say, Groucho meant the most to me. There's the hat with the three balls.
What about Woody Allen? You guys had some great riffing.
Yeah, he was on a lot of times at the beginning, and from the daytime show and others. Woody, when he started appearing on television, was on the Merv Griffin show. And he was new and paralyzed with nerves, but he acquitted himself well. The name Henry Morgan may not mean much to you.
Oh, yeah.
But you will.
Yeah.
But Woody did a stand-up on Merv. Very nervous. I was there to calm him, give him muscle exercises. And then he sat down, and Morgan was a little nasty. And Woody had done a piece about his mother, I think. Merv said, Henry, you and Woody both do comedy. Do you have much in common or something? And Morgan said, I do, but, referring to Woody's piece, but I had two parents. And the audience kind of went, ooh. And Woody said, what were they? He's forgotten it, but I never have.
Those moments were so great. There was a great one between Richard Pryor and Milton Berle. I think it was on Mike Douglas.
Oh, that was so uncomfortable.
What?
Where they got angry. Milton Berle was telling a story about some girl who had gotten an abortion. It was important to him. Mm-hmm. And Pryor, I think, laughed or did something.
Yeah, he started laughing. He was probably stoned out of his head.
Or a little nervous. It's right here. And if you have your headphones, you hear it.
Let's play this. Yeah.
Let Dick get his headphones on.
Well,
so
I ain't got no headphones.
Oh, hold on.
No
You
wonder
sure
I've missed everything.
Oh, you little angel. Hold on.
All right, yeah, let's play this.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Not have a baby.
I'll turn down the
abortion.
Well, I'm sorry, man, but I just did it.
I wish, Richard, that I could have laughed at that time at your age, when I was your age, the way you just laughed now, but I just couldn't. I told you this 9 years ago, and I'm going to tell you on the air in front of millions of people. Pick your spots, baby.
All right, sweetheart.
What did he say?
Pick your spots.
Well,
he said, Milton said, pick your spots, baby. Yeah. And Richard Pryor went, all right, sweetheart.
Right.
But Pryor said he felt bad about that afterwards. He didn't want to argue with Milton Berle. He liked Milton Berle.
Wow. Yeah, it was a very uncomfortable.
That is intense.
By the way, the saddest thing among the people in this room is that I'm probably the only one who heard Fred Allen, all the years that Fred Allen was probably the wittiest person in show business, along with Groucho and George S. Kaufman. And in a letter to Groucho, Fred Allen didn't do well in television. He was great wit. And in a letter to Groucho, who had asked, why do you think Milton Berle has a smashing success? And Allen wrote back, Milton is the moron's messiah.
See, but Fred Allen, it's not a matter of good looking or bad. He was disturbing looking.
Yes, it was almost, he had a very pinched face. He was people of a certain age might remember him in the last years that he was visible, which was on What's My Line as a panelist, yeah. I didn't come here to talk about myself.
He had an unhealthy look, like big bags under his eyes.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to come up with a picture of him.
I'm looking at it right now.
While
Sure.
he's got
Yeah,
the mask
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to see what he looks like. Just a picture of his face.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was an odd-looking guy.
Yeah.
Once in a while,
Oh, yeah.
to this day, a stagehand or a camera assistant or somebody will come up to me and say, "You remember that roast you were on way back with Burl?" And I say, "Yeah." It was too soon for me to rank being on with it, but Jack Rollins got me into things before I was really earned them. So I'm on this big celebrity roast as one of the roasters, Hemian and Smith special, Kraft Music Hall thing, both sides. Milton is the host. And this is what the guy reminded me of. Milton got up and he started in his usual crass and often funny way. And I said, the kid spoke, "Mr. Burrell, are we allowed to ad-lib with you?" And he was very irritated, but he said, "You want to ad-lib with me? I'll check my brains and we'll start even." And I said, "Where would you find a small enough check room?" Well, it doesn't quite scan logically, but it killed them.
Of course it did.
God. And the bastard came over to where I was sitting and said, "Oh, yeah, I see you had that written out." Not true. He was a bit of a schmuck, but
Why did you like...
a powerful comedian. Seeing Burl in a club,
yeah.
Really?
almost terrifyingly powerful.
Well, like the entire Saturday Night Live that he was on is legendary as far as everybody hated him.
Oh, yeah.
Did they have Milton Berle?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that.
He had that quote, "What am I doing now?" Oh, there was a picture of me on something. Maybe that roast. But to this day, a workman on a show will come up and say, "I think you said a Milton Berle that time. I'll never forget it." I don't know why that's so funny. Fred Allen, here's a bit of comedy history. A bunch of them used to sit around, I think, at Ruby Foo's, Alan King, other comics, Henny people, and compete for it was so windy, it was so hot, it was so old, it was so cute.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Fred Allen always won. And they were all ad-lib, and nobody knew what was going to say. My favorite was, "It was so windy, I saw a hen lay the same egg twice."
Wow.
That's
a lot of wind.
Yeah, that certainly is a lot of
Blows
wind.
an egg back into a vagina.
I want to.
I see.
Oh, is that what it means?
Now I get it.
Gilbert looked a little puzzled.
It immediately went from intellectual to
Well,
you. Well,
you have no rural background.
An
so-
egg,
Absolutely.
An egg back in the
You
vagina.
city boys talk the way you need to. I'll just focus on hen pussy.
It's similar to the great S.J. Perelman referring to psychiatrists as a head candler. If you don't have a rural background, you don't know what candling is. Do you know what it is? You candle an egg. You hold it up to see if it's been impregnated or whatever, or if it's still an egg, to a candle flame. So a psychiatrist was a head candler.
So you heard Pryor wasn't happy with that? With the thing with Burl?
Yes, I heard that he respected Milton and he felt like
He regretted that.
he wished it didn't happen or he didn't want to argue with him and he kind of backed off. Like, I mean, I think at that time, Pryor could have been, I mean, that's in the fucking 70s.
I wish I'd known that. Hey, can you imagine how strange it feels a week and a half ago to have somebody come up and say, "You were great last night with Richard Pryor"?
Oh, right.
And I thought, this guy's nuts. They're running my old shows starting about 3 weeks ago on CBS's new digital channel called Decades. You have to Google Decades and see. I don't know what the outlet is in New York.
Just go to dickcavettshow.com, and he's also promoting Brief Encounters. It's a new book that's available now. We forgot to mention that.
We haven't even talked about it yet.
I love your show. I love the way you spoke to people. It was so
amazing.
casual and natural.
It was a conversation.
It was a conversation.
Like we said a little earlier.
Well, the one that ran yesterday, get this trio. It was Muhammad Ali, Lawrence Harvey and Jerzy Kosinski, that fraud who committed suicide.
Oh, now why do you say he was a fraud? This is interesting.
Because it's a fact.
Well, what?
That's the only
fraud
reason.
at what? He didn't write that stuff?
Yeah, he did, and he made up a background. He made up an identity
wow.
for himself, a country for himself. It's too bad. He was a terrific guest, and I liked him immensely. And then to find somebody who fooled you, who's a total bogus character that he was, and committed suicide. I don't know whether he was about to be exposed. Well, I think he was exposed during his lifetime, yes.
Was it in that time he committed suicide, like right after?
Yeah, obviously a contributor to it. Okay, from something, I think it was Gilbert, is it? It never failed. I first did it to a guy once who was interviewing me out in the Midwest, and he had told everybody what great buddies we were, and I had never met him. And he just did it so relentlessly that they said, "When you go on the air with him, is there anything you can do to him?" And so we talked for this great friend of mine, and I talked for about an hour, and then I finally said, Peter, is it? He crumpled. I felt awful about it.
Did
Somebody
he laugh at
knows
that?
the joke about You must know the joke about Burl in a nightclub.
Big dick.
Told with somewhat Jewish dialect.
No, what is it?
I saw Burl's naked ass, but I never saw his prodigious member. The way that, if it weren't for Burl's schlong, half the Friars Club's roast would be empty.
Yeah.
I heard a new one. Georgie Jessel. Georgie Jessel. Another name the young have no idea of, and in some cases well deserved.
Hello, Mama?
Yes!
This is Georgie. Yes, what? You seeing spots before your eyes? Well, why don't you put on your glasses, darling? Oh, now you can see the spots clearer. Hey, did you get that parrot I sent you? What, you ate it? But that parrot spoke 10 different languages. Oh, he should have said something. Then in his famous song, one bright and shining light that taught me wrong from right, I found in my mother's eyes.
2, 3, 4.
Those baby tales she told.
God, he knows the second verse.
Streets all paved with gold. I found in my mother's eyes, just like a wandering sparrow.
There are 7 more verses.
Lonely dog. I walked the straight and narrow till I reached my goal. A light from up above, a bright, unselfish love I found in my mother's eyes.
That is prodigious. My God, you're a gold mine of. But you know the only thing. No, I'm not criticizing.
Yeah.
The only thing you left out. In the halcyon days of show business. He had the halcyon days of show business. Everything he ever said. Now, you can add that. Now, I had him on once, and he was on with Eileen Heckert, with another guest, and I got a lovely note from the great Eileen Heckert saying how nice it was to be on the show. But next time, perhaps without Mr. Pig.
I heard that in the later years, Jessel used to go over to Groucho's house, not so much as a friend, but to have him give him money.
Yes, because he had alimony with at least 7 underage girls and 2 overage girls. And Benny, on one of these things one night, said, I've known George, for 50, 60 years. And to this day, he has earned well over $1,100. So we're sitting in a nightclub, forgive my attempt at a Jewish dialect, with my husband, and Milton Berle is up on the stage. And Milton is doing his jokes. And at one point, my husband's had enough, and he yells out, and Milton Boyle throws a line at my husband, says, "You're something, 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 something." My husband, without a second's thought, says right back, "Milton Boyle, fuck you." A real wit. Jessel. He was on a roast once. My friend Robert Bader, who did my DVD sets, knows everything in show business. And you rarely hear something new. Jessel was at the far end, the long table at the roast. It's not a very good status thing to be at the far end. But there he was, and he got up and he said, "It's obligatory to do a joke about Milton Boyle's cock. It's supposed to be very long. I don't know how long it is, but I'm standing on it." Terrible image.
Yeah, it certainly is.
We got to sell the book properly, Mr. Cavett. What can you tell us about the book Brief Encounters?
Brief
Available
Encounters,
now, by the way.
if I don't get sued for the Noel Coward estate for the movie Brief Encounter, is a collection of my New York Times blogs, and it's about everybody and people in the show business and politics. They don't ask me what I'm going to write about.
Provocative
The ones
essays.
that have gotten some of the most reaction were kind of obituary for James Gandolfini, columns about Jonathan Winters, and one that people of a certain age can't quite get over because the youth of today, who know nothing ahead of their birth, don't even know who Laurel and Hardy were. Was it a moving company or what? And I spent an afternoon with Stan Laurel for about 3 hours in his little apartment overlooking the ocean in Santa Monica.
How old was he then?
Do you know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. He was in his 70s. He lived quite a number more years. He wrote letters every day to his fans. Everybody wrote. I remember the first one I got was, "Thank you for your nice letters so graciously expressed," or thoughts so great. And he was really a gent. And when I opened the door to his apartment, not believing that I was going to go to bed that night, having met Stan Laurel, who helped the fat man push the piano box up the 95 stairs, and it kept coming. That short won an Oscar. But the door opened, and there was a nice-looking man. He'd filled out a bit in the face, but the ear was recognizable. Another part of the face was instantly recognizable. And then in the voice, I think it's called in speech people a bilateral sibilance. "Well, lad, it certainly is nice to meet you." They sort of sound like this. And he told, one thing I remember, he said, people would come visit him, and he said, "I had some guy here, and he did my voice the whole time. The dumb son of a bitch did my voice the whole time." He said, "I was so embarrassed I didn't know where to look." He had an Oscar on the TV. No showbiz pictures. None. A picture about 4x6 of him with Ollie.
Wow.
With Ali?
With Ollie.
Wow.
That was
Not Muhammad Ali.
Oliver.
Yes.
Oh, Ollie.
Oliver.
I'm sorry, Oliver. I thought you said Ali. Okay.
I thought you thought
yeah,
that.
yeah, you were right.
Yeah, we all thought that.
Ollie. Wow.
Now, what's weird? Someone brought up to me, and I find it weird too that I've never heard Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin ever refer to each other, and they came over together.
Thank you for setting me up with this.
I told him that.
See? No, you told me that Charlie Chaplin was blowing Stan Laurel under Walter Winchell's desk.
There's a theme running through your work.
Yes,
That's right.
I asked him, oh, God, what did you say just before that? It reminded me of. Anyway, I asked, there are always rumors that, they never spoke off camera and everything. That wasn't true. But Hardy had no interest in the films. He couldn't wait to get out of the thing and get on the golf course. And Stan said to me, I always saved Babe, he was called Babe, Babe's burns till the last because he was so goddamn mad that he couldn't get to the golf course. And so those great burns on his face were saved. But he didn't have any interest in the movie. He didn't do anything to help them. And Stan worked until midnight editing and changing and so forth. And I said, so you two were friendly? And he said, yeah. I wish I could have gotten this on tape. He said, I went over, I'll stop doing the voice. I went over at Christmas once and I brought Babe a present of some sort. And it was obvious that he hadn't gotten anything for me. But that was all right, he said. But Babe was obviously embarrassed, and so he looked down under the Christmas tree and he picked up a very, very expensive bottle of bourbon and said, you know, this is a great bourbon. There's only one place you can get this in Los Angeles. And he put it back down under the tree.
but how come Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin?
Oh, that's the thing.
Yes.
You cue me better than anybody.
Yes. Now, you were stuck in an elevator in a gorilla suit, weren't you?
Yeah.
Did you ever blow Wally Cox, Mr. Cavett?
Not in the daytime. What does that mean?
That means you blew him at night.
Well,
okay.
I was sort of annoyed, but a great publishing event one year was that finally Charles Chaplin let out his autobiography, and it sold like crazy, and it was bore your ass off, and over melodramatic description of his mother's insanity, and thus the fates dealt with mother. Anybody who could write the line, thus the fates dealt with mother, has something wrong with him.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Chaplin wasn't talented.
Yeah.
But I asked Stan about him, and I said, you know what, aside from the boredom of his book, there's a picture of you with him in it and the Carnot troupe that they belong to in England coming to America for the first time on the ship. And yet your name doesn't come up anywhere in the book. Having two great comedians arrive at the same time was too much for the little fellow. And he said, he didn't criticize my comment. He just said, it's a crime to mention me in the same breath with Charlie.
Wow. Meaning he thought Charlie was that much better?
Yeah.
Damn.
Fascinating.
Wow.
That was a night. He had a letter he gave. He said, you might want to read this. And it was this beautifully handwritten letter, a couple pages, nice stationery, beautiful handwriting. And in it, first paragraph I saw, glancing at it, was, I have always tried to emulate you in so much of my work. Alec Guinness. He was flattered by having.
He wrote that to me.
He'd written it.
Yeah.
No, it was.
It was when I was
No, you
filming
got one
Problem
too.
Child. Alec Guinness wrote me.
It was duplicated. Alec Guinness, genuine class. Will I be remembered for that anagram?
We've already forgotten you
Exactly.
today.
Yeah.
No one has ever punched you.
Well, Mr.
You and
Cavett,
I did one of the best podcasts ever.
Yes. Yeah. You showed up on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast on gilbertgottfried.com.
That's a mouthful.
That was, you were one of those guests that I love where you just click on the mic and then you could pretty much go out and see a movie and come back.
I loved your apartment with the Groucho picture.
Oh,
and-
somebody gave me a gigantic Groucho painting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right next to the Adolf Eichmann.
Yeah.
You all know the late Larry Gelbart, of my king of comedy writers. Do you remember, you older ones, the head of the UN for a while was Kurt Waldheim of Österreich.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a biography. And right after his autobiography came out, it was discovered that he had been in the SS. He didn't mention that. Larry Gilbert, said, "There's a new disease we have to worry about now. Waldheimers. You forget you were a Nazi." I hope it came to his attention.
I have to pee.
Yeah, we got to pee, Mr. Cavett. This is always a pleasure. Unbelievable.
Well,
promoting Brief Encounter's new book available now. I'm thinking I'm going to download this thing on my Audible. Yeah, did you read it?
Yeah, and you know, you'll never believe this. My wife woke me up recently saying, "I'm married to a Grammy Award nominee." The voice book, what do you call it? The
Audio,
book,
yeah.
the audio book was up for a Grammy.
Nice.
People love the audio book.
Right.
And I say, why? It kills you to read your own stuff from 9 to 5, 2 days in a row, as you may know. They said, we do all the voices of the people you talk about. I sort of do that unconsciously. But it's a very good audio book.
Right.
Yeah. And it was in spoken arts, a category that isn't quite seen on the air.
So you read, you recorded?
Yeah, you read your own book.
Because I recorded my audiobook. I hated every second of
Doing it is murder.
Because they tell you how to talk. They're like, okay, slow down. You have to enunciate. It's like, I don't know how to talk. It's annoying.
You want to take that line again? And I got saying no. If that one's bad, use it. I just
why not?
Yeah.
See, here
Your
you go.
voice.
Yeah, we got to.
Oh, we have Jerry Cooney coming in, so I'm going to pee.
Yeah, we're going to take a break. I mean, if you want to
You're
stick
welcome to
around,
stay.
you're more
We'll
than
just
welcome.
bring Jerry up to
We're
the
not
front.
telling Dick Cavett to leave, that's
Yeah,
for sure.
you want to stay through the next
No,
break?
I'd like you to leave.
Yeah.
DickCavettShow.com for all the old shows.
We're meeting Wally Cox later. Odd that he'd be named that. Isn't it?
You said a mouthful.
Oh no, blackout.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back.
Right back.
Opie and Jimmy continue on with the show.